I'm currently the coordinator for whyislam Southern California. So alhamdulillah, yes. So today we have a dear friend of mine. He was a former whyislam coordinator in the past for a long time, alhamdulillah, and my mentor for our work. Brother Amir, he will do the presentation. But before we get started, I want to go over some of the basic stuff. What is whyislam, and etc. Okay. So okay, anyways, so yes, before you guys start, please keep us in your duas for whyislam. We do have a large good page, so please donate. So anyways, whyislam is a project of ICNA. ICNA is a national organization in multiple states in Canada. It also is a movement oriented, and yeah. So we have ICNA has many programs such as ICNA Relief, Helping Hand, YM, and etc. And ICNA's shit. So we do camps and we do a lot of events. So, anyways, what is whyislam? whyislam project. It was established in 1999 New Jersey, and it came to Southern California in 2000. The objective of whyislam is to provide the public accurate information on Islam and invite them to dialogue and discussion. So many of you guys are asking questions. How do we get whyislam certification or the award? There's four requirements. There are five things to get certified. First of all, you have to take this course, the next few courses, the dawah methodology, the fiqh dawah, a little bit on the comprehensive religion by Dr. Sabil, and you continue to be collective courses that are part of the list and test. Further ado, I would like to have Brother Amir take over.
Right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa bishrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa ahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the first of many sessions. I'm excited to be the first with you all. I'll start off by first saying that this is super exciting to be a part of. whyislam is near and dear to my heart. It's been a project that we've been involved in for quite some time. The brothers and sisters in Southern California and New Jersey and Chicago and Houston and all over the country have done an amazing job in getting organized in their dawah efforts. And we could see from the Prophet Muhammad's example throughout his time in Mecca, throughout his time in Medina, that this is not a haphazard effort. This is not random. This is not ill-organized. That dawah from the start of mankind with Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam and Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, that Allah, God, would send numerous messages to them to portray the message of Islam to the people, or the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Tawheed to the people, and that this is something incumbent upon all Muslims. So I'll go ahead and start with sharing my screen, the presentation. But before we do that, just a quick couple kind of ground rules. I'm super relaxed, guys. This is a very relaxed session. It's my style. I've been involved in this work for quite some time, and I wish I was involved a lot more. But there's a chat session at the bottom, or there's a chat button at the bottom of Zoom, right at the bottom. If you haven't used Zoom before, it's okay. If you look at the bottom, there's a chat button. If for some reason you have a burning question you want to ask, type it in. We can get it up on, I can answer it in real time, inshallah, as we go through the presentation. You're welcome to record the session. We don't mind at all. And hopefully this will be the start of many more prominent scholars, inshallah, to come as part of the program, and speakers who have much more experience than I do. All right, so let's go ahead and get this baby started. All right. First off, we start with introduction to dawah. And I'm assuming,
Amir, can you switch your screen?
Sorry, give me one sec. I'm sorry, Saad, can you make me the host again, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone. Welcome to Zoom and the headache that Zoom is. All right. Okay, hopefully everybody can see my screen now. Hello. Okay, so we go ahead and start, inshallah. And we start with the introduction to dawah. Again, Jazakallah khairan, Brother Saad Bholat. He's the current Southern California chair for whyislam. And whyislam, in a nutshell, is a project. It's a project of ICNA. There's committees all over the place and all over the country. And they put up billboards, radio ads, TV ads. There's booths and presentations all over the country at different fairs and festivals. And so we start, basically the general layout of today is going to go like this. It's kind of 5 parts. Number 1, we're going to go over some Quran and Sunnah. For those of you who are always hell-bent on getting dalil for anything that's mentioned, it's always a good practice to get dalil for anything. We always want to start with, where are we getting our information from? Why do we think da'wah is important? Well, we think it's important because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said so. And we'll get to those in just a sec. We're going to talk about the numbers. I'm going to go over a series of facts about Americans in general, and just or even Western societies in general, and about their perception of Islam. We're going to talk about being on team messengers and what that means. We're going to talk about a bit about the benefits of da'wah. And then really, probably the most important question, and probably the hardest for a lot of us, is how do we start? If you've never given da'wah before, this is probably the most important thing, is how do I do it? I just walk to my neighbor's house and start Jehovah witnessing them, and pulling some tricks from the Mormon book. What do I do here? And we're going to be talking about other religions. We're going to be talking about other groups. This session does not demean anyone. It's with all due respect to everyone. So take it with a grain of salt and be lighthearted, inshallah. So we start with words from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Excuse me. We start with the words of the Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن أحسن قولا ممن دعا إلى الله وعمل صالحا وقال إنني من المسلمين. These are beautiful words from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who says, who is better in speech than the one who invites to Allah and does righteousness and says, indeed, I am of the Muslims. This is so beautiful when you start off giving your da'wah, because you know what you're doing right from the start is righteous. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us this is the best of speech. Who is better in speech than the one who invites to Allah? Which basically tells you that your responsibility, that as Muslims, we have a responsibility to start inviting others to Islam, to inviting others to Allah. We're not inviting them to a football game. We're not inviting them to my house for dinner or to learn about me. I'm not important in this scenario. The invitation is to Allah. And da'wah in general, and you'll hear it from the other scholars that are going to be presenting in this series, da'wah means an invitation. It comes from the yad'u, right? To invite someone to something. In this scenario, we're inviting people to experience what Islam has to offer, to fill that void in their heart and fill it up with something beautiful. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues and does righteousness and says, indeed, I am of the Muslims. Something so beautiful and so profound. Indeed, I am of the Muslims. We miss sometimes this sense of pride and this sense of dignity. It's almost like a secondary part of our identity. Oh, I'm from Pakistan. Oh, I'm from Lebanon. Oh, I'm American. I'm a woman. I'm a man. I'm part of this organization. At the end of the day, all of that is irrelevant. وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, that I am of this group of people who have accepted Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم رسلا مبشرين ومنذرين لئلا يكون للناس على الله حجة بعد الرسل وكان الله عزيزا حكيما. This is another interesting verse from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who says, and we sent messengers as bringers of good tidings, as those who brought good tidings. and warners, so that mankind will have no argument against Allah after the messengers. And ever is Allah exalted in might and wise and wisdom. And so this is another interesting point about the messengers that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent many books. He sent many prophets and many messengers with the books, right? With the teachings and messages. One thing to consider is that when you start giving dawah, you are becoming part of this team of messengers. You're joining this elite group of people who've taken upon themselves to get out there and start performing and inviting people to Allah. What this verse is talking about specifically is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that these messengers are doing two things. Number one, they're giving people glad tidings. We're not just warning people of hellfire or teaching people about the fear of Allah. We're telling people this is an opportunity for you to enter Jannah. This is the best investment on your return. This is the best opportunity you'll ever have in your life. Once you accept this, you have eternal paradise. What more do you want? What better investment in you personally is there than accepting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your life? The second part of this verse is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us so that the people on the day of judgment don't have a argument against Allah to say, oh, Allah, you never sent us anybody. Or, oh, Allah, how could you put me in hellfire? You know, your messenger who was right next door to me, my neighbor, never even came to teach me about you. All they put out lights for Ramadan, but I never once got an invitation. They fasted throughout the month. They had all these random celebrations, but never once did they tell me about Allah. They told me about how Muslims are not terrorists, and that was productive. They told me how we pray 5 times a day, and that was great, but they never told me about Allah. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَزِيزًا حَكِيمًا, and ever is Allah exalted in might and wisdom. This is from Al-Bukhari. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says from Abdullah ibn Umar, according to which the Prophet Muhammad said, convey from me, even if it is one verse. Now, it's funny, the verses of da'wah in the Quran and the hadith about da'wah, they're plenty, all right? And every speaker on da'wah will use the same one. So excuse me for, you're gonna hear these verses in these hadith a lot. But this hadith is interesting in particular because the Prophet is saying, convey from me, even if it is one verse, which means even if you don't have the entire Quran memorized, if you only have Surah Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad memorized, or Surah Al-Fatiha memorized, or if you have the English version of Surah Al-Fatiha memorized, you're a new Muslim, and you just learned La ilaha illallah, that is enough for you to get out and start conveying the message. There is no prerequisite of da'wah. This is the coolest thing about da'wah is that you can have basically zilch in terms of knowledge, and you don't have to be a scholar to get out there and start doing this. It's beautiful because everyone is called to give da'wah of all races, ages, genders, ethnicities, it doesn't matter. Man, woman, it does not matter. Everyone has a responsibility to give da'wah, and the proof is obviously we're going through it, but the Prophet ﷺ taught us again, convey from me, even if it was one verse, بَلِّغُ عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. The Prophet ﷺ also said in his final sermon, this was in his, after the Prophet ﷺ at the last Hajj that he did, Hajjat al-Wada', in his final sermon. And by the way, I have 2 beautiful kids. They might be running in and out. Excuse me, and I'm sorry. They're wonderful and amazing, and you'll get to meet them, inshallah, during the presentation. So the Prophet ﷺ says in his final sermon, and this is kind of towards the end of the sermon, let those who are present convey to those who are not present. And this is also considered by scholars of da'wah, that this is also a command to say, all right, this is your opportunity to take from what the Prophet ﷺ is giving you and give it to the rest of humanity. Because as we know, the Prophet was not the prophet of the Arabs. He wasn't the prophet of Muslims. He wasn't the prophet of Bani Quraysh. He was the prophet of humanity, the last and final message. That was the point, right? The previous messengers were sent to Bani Israel, the children of Israel, to the Jews at that time. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was sent to humanity. In that vein, you accepting Islam means that you yourself have to give the message to all of humanity, all right? I'll give you one more verse, inshallah, in Surah Al-Nahl. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن إن ربك هو أعلم بمن ضل عن سبيله وهو أعلم بالمهتدين. And the translation, invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good instruction, and argue with them in a way that is best. Truly, indeed, your Lord is most knowing of who has gone astray from his way, and he is most knowing of who is rightly guided. The beginning of this verse, the scholars talk a lot about this. This is a command, ud'u, meaning you reading this book, the Quran, it's telling you to do something. Ud'u. Get out there and start inviting ila sabili rabbik, to the way of your Lord, with wisdom and fair preaching. And we'll stop right there. The point of a lot of scholars when they talk about this verse is that this is a commandment. This is a obligation upon Muslims to start teaching people about Islam. All right, there are a lot of ahadith, a lot of ayat about da'wah. If you need more dalil than that, consult with your local scholar, with your local imam. I'm sure they will have a lot to give you, inshallah. If you're still not satisfied, that is incumbent upon you, inshallah, and on the rest of us to get out there and give da'wah. So let's talk about the numbers for a bit. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. There are 1.8 billion Muslims around the world. 1.8 billion. I want you to pause on this number for a second, because this tells us right over here that a quarter of the globe is Muslim. 1/4 of the entire world is Muslim. There's no Khilafah, there's no Khalifa, there's no Islamic State. Most Muslim countries barely even run off of Sharia law. Most Muslim countries barely even use the Quran as their guiding platform. And still, a quarter of the globe is Muslim. Islam in the United States is the fastest growing religion. Islam throughout the world is the fastest growing religion. Again, these are on average. Overall, certain areas might differ. Overall, Islam is still the fastest growing religion. Brothers and sisters, I remember 10 years ago giving this presentation, a presentation similar to this, and using the same exact numbers, and they still have not changed 10 years later. It's still the fastest growing religion. I want you to think about the effort that you've put in terms of da'wah from 10 years to today. And think about that for a second. Even without your effort, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is still progressing his religion. This is an important point to consider, that Islam as a whole and the religion does not rely on its individual followers to host it up. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has guaranteed this religion's success with or without you. The train is moving. It's your responsibility. It's up to you now to see if you want to jump on and contribute or not. If you do or not, it's neither me or anybody else can judge. It's on you. Islam is projected to be the largest religion in the world by the end of this century. Just mere statistics and numbers, by growth patterns and so on, the end of basically 2100 will be the largest religion in the world. Allah alam, we'll see how that pans out. Inshallah, way sooner than that. We're already the largest religion if you consider Christians and Catholics to be separate religions, but anyways, we won't get into that too much. In the United States, according again to the Pew Research Center, in the United States there are 3.5 million Muslims. Honestly, personally, I don't have any data to back this up. I think that's baloney. 3.5 million sounds way too low. Other estimates put the number of Muslims in the United States at 7 to 8. Some even say 10 million Muslims. Again, I have no data to back that up. So take it with a grain of salt, inshallah. There are millions of Muslims in this country, all right? And there have been for ages. Since the time of the first slaves that came to this country, Muslims have been on this land. The Quran is the most read and most memorized book in the world. Again, 20 years ago and 30 years ago and 40 years ago, Ahmad Didat was talking about the same thing. And Dr. Zakir Naik was talking about the same thing. Until today, the same thing is still true. The Quran is still the most read and most memorized book in the world. Interesting note, this has been quite some time after 9/11, but I remember after 9/11, even in whyislam, the number of calls after 9/11 to the whyislam 1877 whyislam 9 skyrocketed. something like 34,000 new Muslims, 34,000 people came into the fold of Islam after 9/11. Brothers and sisters, what am I getting at here? What are all these facts and numbers about? What I'm trying to portray is, in all honesty, I don't mean to be harsh in saying this, you're not needed. You are not needed for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's message to be supreme. You individually and your efforts to support the religion of Islam will not do anything to the religion of Islam if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want it to. What da'wah does is for you internally, for you personally. What do we need from you? We don't need anything. The question is, what do you need? What do you need? As a society, we need to understand that being a messenger is part of our DNA. As a Muslim, being a messenger is part of our DNA. Giving da'wah and telling people about Islam and about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be the first thing that we focus on as being a Muslim. And I say this, with obviously understanding that many people have different paths. You have scholars that are being scholars and that are in the light of in the shade of ilm all day long, in the shade of knowledge all day long. And you have people that are front lines of political work all day long, progressing the values of Muslims on the political front. You have people in the relief efforts, being at the front lines, trying to care for people all throughout the world. You need to find your niche as a Muslim. What we're doing here today is trying to basically present to you a platform on how you can benefit yourself, inshallah, through your efforts of da'wah. So da'wah is the work of messengers. This is really, really, really exciting. To step back for a sec and think that Sayyidina Nuh, alayhi salam, for 950 years, day in, day out, 950 years of da'wah, of calling to Allah, of being rejected, of going back, of being rejected, of going back. And Ibn Abbas, according to his opinion, he says that it was around 80 believers at the end of the day, after 950 years of da'wah. 80 believers. Other opinions have it at 72. Other opinions have it at 10. Can you believe that for a sec? And here comes Sayyidina Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu, a few years into Islam, and 7 of the people that are mubashirin bil Jannah, that are guaranteed Jannah, according to a hadith from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, became Muslim through his efforts in a few years. The point that we're trying to make here, number one, to be crystal clear, your effort is not about you benefiting Islam or you bringing people to the fold of Islam and then becoming Muslim. Your effort is the journey here. It's not about the results. It's about your effort. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want to see 1,000 people become Muslim and then 1,000 people become non-Muslim the very next day because of our efforts. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see our effort out there. Let me kind of clarify. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see us trying our best, trying our hardest to convey his words no matter what. And again, we raise our hand at the end of the day and leave it up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَهُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِالْمُهْتَدِينَ. Indeed, O Muhammad, you do not guide whom you like, but Allah guides whom he wills. And he is most knowing of the rightly guided. Think about that for a sec. Sayyidina Nuh for 950 years walks away with maybe 80 believers. Sayyidina Abu Bakr walks away with 7 of the people that are guaranteed paradise and many more. It's not about results. It doesn't make Sayyidina Abu Bakr better than Sayyidina Nuh or vice versa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the judge of all of that. Our efforts are the most important part of what we have to bring to the table as Muslims. So obviously there are many benefits in tackling da'wah. And I'll kind of go through them one by one. Obviously, the first and foremost is the idea that it's mandatory, right? Given that we just kind of went over a slew of hadith and a slew of ayat that talk about da'wah, it's really important that we understand da'wah is not a suggestion, especially for Muslims living in the West. Especially for people that are living in the West, it's not, hey, hopefully if you have time, do it. It's a obligation. Excuse me, it's mandatory. And it's part of obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commands. We talked about being part of the team messengers. Imagine you're doing the same work that Sayyidina Musa was doing, Sayyidina Isa was doing, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was doing. This is kind of weird to think about when Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes to Ta'if. and he's stoned by the children in Ta'if, it's important to think about your efforts as you're giving da'wah, to think about Prophet Muhammad ﷺ went out of his way to do all of these things. I can take it upon myself to walk 10 feet over to my neighbor's house, maybe teach them about Islam. There's obviously immense reward, all right? I'm not going to get too much into the ahadith about reward and too much into the ahadith about, or the ayat about reward. A lot of the brothers and scholars and sisters that are going to be giving the presentations in the series, they'll talk more about that, but the reward is immense. And one thing I want you to think about when it comes to reward, let's kind of take our imagination for a bit on a ride, all right? I want you to think about, Bob in Kentucky, okay? This guy named Bob lives in the middle of Kentucky, in the middle of a small town, and there are no Muslims around him. The only opportunity he's had to learn about Islam is from Fox News and CNN and Bloomberg and the Washington Post and all these other dummies talking about Islam on TV. That's his basically his world view of Islam, is through his very narrow vision of whatever he's fed on TV and on the internet. This person, Bob, meets you one day in the airport, in Chick-fil-A, in whatever, however way you guys meet. And you strike up a conversation about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Bob decides to become a Muslim, all right? Or maybe Bob leaves you without becoming a Muslim, but later on that night, he's at home, and the fitrah that is already inside him, that innate feeling that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us about, that is already inside every human being, comes alive. It bursts through that wall of Fox News and all that nonsense and convinces Bob that he needs to accept Islam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is his Lord. And so he does, all right? And Bob now is married with 4 children. And Bob starts to give da'wah to his wife and his children. And his wife and his children accept Islam. Bob, in the middle of Kentucky, in this small little village who had no exposure to Islam, Bob and his wife and his 4 children are now Muslim. Little Ricky, who was Bob's son, grows up one day and gets married to a woman who's also Muslim, and they have children. And for generations to come, Bob's family is now Muslim. And Bob's family is now in the middle of a community that is, he's a good example to his community. There's immense reward coming from you, for you, that's waiting for you in Jannah. That, just take that in for a second. Think about the generations of Muslims that have come to the fold of Islam on your simple 5, 10, 15-minute conversation of planting the seed in Bob's head, or Ricky, or Jesus, or whoever it may be. That little seed that you planted in his head grew and grew and grew, and it allowed for the fitrah to come alive. Brothers and sisters, there's immense reward in da'wah. It's not a small feat. There's so much reward, to the extent that the Prophet ﷺ basically told us that if you guided someone to do a good deed, you'll get the ajr, you'll get the reward of that good deed in perpetuity, forever. So there's immense reward. I think I've beat that point to death, all right? There's combating Islamophobia. Most of you have heard of CARE. If not, CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations. A few years ago, they posted a report that basically said the majority of Americans have never met a Muslim. The majority of Americans, 360 million Americans, have never met a Muslim. And when you think about it, if there's only 5, 10 million Muslims in this country, of course that's the case, right? The majority of Americans, 350 million, of course they would have not met a Muslim. And the report also said that of those Americans that met a Muslim, their view on Islam became favorable after they interacted with a Muslim. Meaning that pre-knowing a Muslim, their view on Islam was whack, all right? Post interacting with a Muslim, after they've interacted with a Muslim and they met a Muslim, their image of Islam became favorable. Islamophobia is a real thing, brothers and sisters, and it's not, I wish it was as easy to step away from and for harm to not come on the Muslims. Unfortunately, Islamophobia is a real thing, and Muslims are harmed every single day, harassed every single day throughout this country. Dawah, one of the benefits of dawah is we lessen that Islamophobia. We lessen that harm to other Muslims that's happening to other Muslims. One of the most beautiful benefits that I've received from giving dawah, and I wish that again, I'm much more active. I wish that was the case, because personal knowledge to me, the first time someone came to me and asked me about the age of Sitna Aisha when she married the Prophet Muhammad and confronted me on the issue, I was young, maybe 17, 18, and or maybe a little older, and I was stumped. And I sat there thinking, what? What kind of religion would allow for a 13-year-old to be married to a 40-year-old man? This is insane. You know, I can't remember how old the Prophet was. That's insane to think about. And I could not accept this idea personally at that time. And it took me a long time to get there. I started researching and I started sitting down with the Sheikh. I went to the masjid, and Sheikh Hala, I remember at Claremont Masjid in Southern California, I remember every single week I would come back to him, Sheikh Hala, you need to tell me the answer to this question, dude, like what's going on? And he would tell me, Amir, calm down, sit down, read this, come back to me with questions. I'd sit there and read, boom, boom, boom. All right, boom, I got it. Next question. Oh, well, the Prophet did X, Y, and Z. What? And I'd go through the same dilemma, same scenario all over again. Brothers and sisters, Islam is not a complicated religion, but if you don't have the knowledge to combat some of these outlandish remarks about the Prophet or about Islam, you're going to be stumped. And that's okay. That's my favorite part of giving dawah, is when someone tells me something about my religion and I am legitimately stumped. I have no answer. And I will never make it up. I'm not going to defend something that might not even be true. You know, this is this has been a trend for quite some time, maybe past 20 years. It's people taking the ahadith that are mawdu', that are fabricated ahadith that are in Bukhari's collection, and they'll basically rip them off some website and come to you and say, hey, explain this hadith to me. How can this be true? And the problem is there legitimately is no explanation if the hadith is fabricated. If someone literally made up this hadith, you should never waste your time in explaining the hadith. And so one of the biggest personal benefits to me was just my knowledge of Islam. My knowledge grew immensely because you're going to be challenged about things about Islam that you just didn't understand, all right? And there are many things, all right? Islam is very clear in its faith. There are many things that you're going to want explanations for. Societal improvement. This is something that we forget sometimes as Muslims. And I know there are a few questions in the chat box, inshallah. I'll get to those in just a bit. Societal improvement, we forget sometimes that we are right, that we are on the right path, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us a message that was perfect in a book that was perfect. We forget that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came down with a message that was perfect for everybody. We forget this. And so what do we do sometimes is we kind of cocoon ourselves as Muslims. We are the Muslim community, cocooned at this masjid, all right? Cocooned at this organization. We have youth groups that we don't allow outsiders. It's just our youth. We forget that this message is for everybody and that society would benefit from us if we just, contributed just a bit. We forget that joining committees in your society, in your community, in your city could be a good thing, because your opportunity for dawah to teach people about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how our religion and how our system works is a good thing. You could potentially stop the next strip club that's opening up in your community if you just paid attention to what's happening in your society, in your locality. You could potentially stop the next liquor store that's opening up right down the street from your child's elementary school if you just started paying attention. Our society can benefit a lot from us. Dawah isn't just some simple, interaction of words between two people. Dawah is dawah by example. How Islam spread to almost all of Asia was through the merchants. We all know the stories. The merchants would sit there and they're selling a rug to you, and then Dhuhr would come. They would leave their booth and go back to the back and pray Dhuhr. And people would be mesmerized. How could you just leave all of your stock and all of your merchandise right there for people to steal? They would come back, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the giver and He's the provider, and he gave me the stock, and I'm selling it to benefit me and my family, and he'll return it to me if it's stolen. This is how it works, by our personal example. We need to understand that we could benefit society greatly and deeply if we just stopped for a second and paid attention. I hate to say this is a little selfish, but there's immediate gratification in giving dawah. There is no better feeling than someone who is confused about Islam coming to you and you doing your utmost, everything you can to clear misconceptions, to give them understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that person, you could see it. You could see it in their eyes, that glimmer of like, okay, something isn't adding up here. Trinity doesn't make any sense. The fact that there's no heaven and hell doesn't make any sense. There has to be accountability. How did this world start? These things aren't making any sense. And you'll see, wallahi, you will see it. That little light bulb turn on. It might not happen right then and there. I've seen, I can't tell you how many stories I've been in. At the LA Times Festival of Books, millions of people come to it. And I swear to you, I spent 2 hours with this guy. I'll never forget his name, David. I spent 2 hours with him going back and forth. He was an atheist about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I was not getting anywhere, all right? Just brick wall after brick wall. He did not want to accept. I kept pushing the same thing. I was getting stubborn. He was getting stubborn. Finally, the sister that was at the booth comes in, says, Amir, why don't you go take a break, all right? You've had enough. Your turn is over. Go take a break. Wallahi, within 10 minutes, the person became a Muslim right in front of my eyes. 10 minutes with the sister, he became Muslim right in front of my eyes. After putting 2 hours of my life in this guy and getting frustrated, getting nowhere, 10 minutes later, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him through her beautiful words, whatever she said to him. We had a long conversation after this. And she was so happy. You could see it in her eyes. And wallahi, I was thrilled. I was beyond thrilled. Not because we got another shahada, not because it happened and I was involved in it, because this person was going to hellfire potentially. This person, Dave, was potentially going to hellfire for the rest of his life. And alhamdulillah, our small little interaction maybe got him out of hellfire. That's a really big deal. And in that kind of sense of logic, in that moment, I want you to think about people that are in your life that you know, your coworkers, your neighbors, your nurse, your doctor, people that are in your life that are not Muslim, your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, whoever, right, that are not Muslim. You have an opportunity, brothers and sisters, just like Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did with his uncle Abu Talib. He tried and tried and tried. And his effort maybe didn't lead to the result he wanted. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him advice about that too. But his effort made the distance with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It made the biggest difference with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because it showed that his prophet was committed, even if his uncle chose not to accept Islam. Brothers and sisters, you have a responsibility, like I do, to preach. And there's immediate gratification in this. So we're kind of approaching the last few minutes of the presentation. This is the last slide, I believe. And this is probably the toughest part, right? How to start. I've always had, I'll tell you, alhamdulillah, unfortunately for you, I've never had a hard time with this. I'm loud, I'm obnoxious, I'm extrovert, I love people. I'll get in their face right away and we'll start talking about this stuff. Everybody's different. My first thing I'll tell you is set your intention, all right? Your intention has to be crystal clear and you have to have a niyyah safia, all right? Like a purified intention. Why is this important? Because sometimes many people will enter the field of da'wah wanting to get a shahada and just wanting to pop some numbers. I know brothers will come back, boom, I got 30 people today. 30 people became Muslim from this brother's efforts, all right? And unfortunately, it's become almost kind of like a badge of showing off. And that's never the case. Islam is not that. That's not how we were taught from the Prophet ﷺ to just kind of show off in this scenario. That's not the case. If you're able to get 30 people to accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then more power to you, go for it. But just set your intention to be clear and straight, that your intention is to teach people about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and about Islam. Start with your community. This is my biggest piece of advice for you. And if you're not comfortable starting with your neighbor, with your coworker, with your doctor, with your community, then start with a community that's super far away from you, doing online. Online, I swear to you, was the most frustrating thing for me because 90% of the comments are meant to be inflammatory. Rarely do people go on to chat rooms, back when chat rooms was a thing. I'm sorry, I'm 36. Chat rooms are no longer a thing. But back when chat rooms were popular, I'd go in these chat rooms and waste 4 hours of my life yelling and screaming at some guy on the other line who could probably care less. He just wanted to rile me up. But start online through social media, post certain things that you see that you think are helpful. It'll help you at least get your feet wet into interactions with people and how to convince people of certain points. What's your style? I think everybody has a dawah style. I'm a fan of this because I think it's important. I told you who I am and what I like and what I'm about. You might be the exact opposite. You might not like talk to people. You might not like personal interaction. You might be an introvert. You might be into science. You might be into the sciences of the Quran. You might be into history. Basically have an angle is what I'm saying. You know, try to figure out what your style is. And there's many. One of my heroes in Islam is Sheikh Ahmed Didat. And he's a hero of mine because he taught me how to be a proud Muslim. He taught me how to be proud of my identity and how to be proud of my Islam. And Ahmed Didat's style was, there's no other way of explaining it, right? Take a debate, pick an opponent, and go at it, and go left and right. Memorizing the Quran, memorizing the Gita, memorizing the Bible, doing whatever it takes to make sure that his point is clear through debate. Other styles are very anti-debate. You have a style that's interfaith, right? We should all just get along. Let's all hold hands and sing a song. If that's your style, that's okay with me, whatever. Just get out there and give some dawah. Some brothers and sisters like to do the shahada approach, that you should be approaching dawah with the intention of getting a shahada. And in essence, you should try to get a shahada in 10 or 15 minutes. And some brothers and sisters like the idea of a passive approach. I want to be able to give Quran to someone, give some literature to someone, give a link to a cool website, give an article, a video, and then kind of lay off. All right, that's my approach. Brothers and sisters, honestly, I could care less. All right, it doesn't matter what your approach is. Just do something. Pick one and go for it. It doesn't have to be from these four. It could be whatever is you. All right, whatever you feel you're comfortable with, do that. There's no like rhyme or reason here. There's no 10-point approach that whyislam has developed or the other organizations. All I'll tell you is the best way to approach dawah is to start. Do it, and then you'll figure out what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you like and what you don't like. The first time you use verses of the Bible that you thought you knew, and then someone who actually knows the Bible well refutes you really quickly, you'll know maybe I shouldn't use the Bible verses too often, all right? You'll know really quickly where your style is. Lastly, I'll tell you, refine your skills. The most important part of being a da'i or da'iyah is refining your skills. This is the funnest part, to be honest with you, is refinement, right? Sometimes you're gonna find your approach to be very rough. And sometimes you're gonna find your approach to be very too soft. You wanna find your balance, all right? And you're gonna refine those skills. You're gonna see that sometimes you get overly anxious about proving that Muslims aren't terrorists. And then you're gonna realize later down the line that really wasn't an important topic. And you'll learn, inshallah, in the other sessions, what is important to talk about and what is not important to talk about. And you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised what you think is important and what is not. But refine those skills. Make sure that you hone in on those skills for the benefit of yourself and for the benefit of others. With that being said, Jazakumullahu khairan. Sorry for yapping at you for an hour or maybe a little less. I'll answer a few of the questions, inshallah, to the best of my ability. I want to reiterate, I'm not a scholar, I'm not a sheikh, I'm not someone who has learned. So by all means, if I said or did anything, that you don't agree with, that you think is shady, that you think is dicey, consult with your local imam, correct me in the chat box. I'll happy to put my information in the chat box as well. You could chime in. So one of the questions is, can you please elaborate on how to explain to non-Muslims that Prophet Muhammad came to mankind, not only to the Arabs? Again, the question is, can you please elaborate on how to explain to non-Muslims that Prophet Muhammad came to mankind, not only to the Arabs? Jazakallah, that's a great question. The first thing that I'll tell you is, I think in lecture number 5 of this series, or lecture number 4, that we're going to be going through tough questions. And we're going to have a few people that are going to be giving these sessions that have kind of handpicked some tough questions, and you'll be able to actually ask some yourself in the chat box that are going to be going over this. One thing that I'll tell you right off the bat is the most, I think, to me, one of the most successful arguments I've had in conveying Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the Prophet to everybody, all non-Muslims, was explaining kind of the timeline of things, okay? And this is just my personal approach, by the way. I've learned this from a few scholars, but by all means, you can have your own approach. One thing that I like to do is, I don't like to ever sideline Christianity or Judaism. The first thing I do is I talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his plan for humanity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started with creating everything, right? And one day he created Adam and asked the angels to prostrate to him, and the jinn and everybody else to prostrate to him. And the story starts from there. Adam basically, and Hawa, Adam and Eve, went to earth. And on earth, they've started life as we know it today. And in that life, and by the way, if you're not muted, if you don't mind going on mute, that would be great. When Adam and Eve got to earth, they basically started humanity. And in essence, humanity started growing and learning about everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not put Adam on earth without a plan. And so Allah's plan was to send messengers and prophets throughout the ages to teach people about Allah, to teach people about his message, to teach people about accountability, to teach people about being righteous, to teach people about believing in the oneness of Allah, about the oneness of Allah, about being righteous, and about accountability. In essence, if you look at every prophet's message, it was those 3 things: oneness of Allah, being righteous, and that you are accountable for your deeds. And so what I like to do is explain it like that. And so comes Sayyidina Nuh, and then Sayyidina Dawood, and then Moses, and then Jesus, and then Muhammad. This was part of the plan. It never changed. This wasn't on accident. Moses was sent to the children of Israel. Jesus, peace be upon him, was sent to the children of Israel. And they still did not believe. And they still chose to go against the word of their prophet. And so in finality, as a way to bring everything together, as a way to confirm the past messages, as a way to confirm what Jesus, peace be upon him, came down with, as a way to tell people, hey, Jesus was right, because there was the children of Israel who didn't believe in Jesus. To tell that Jesus was the true messenger of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Prophet Muhammad saying, everything he said was legit. Everything Moses said was legit, peace be upon him. Everything all of the prophets said was legit. Here's a finality of the message. And this is how we live life in a society. I like kind of approaching this like all-encompassing approach. The plan from the get-go was this, and this is just the mere last step of the process. And so in that scenario, I'll give you that as a tidbit. By all means, the shuyukh and the scholars that are coming after me, they'll be able to explain it maybe even a little better. One of the sisters had a question: are there a lot of sisters doing dawah? Oh my God, yes. I wish there were more brothers doing dawah. There's so many sisters doing dawah. And honestly, if I could say, I hate to say this in this kind of rude terms, but they kick our butts, generally speaking. At the dawah booth, you'll see the sisters are there early, they're committed, they are on top of things, they're organized, they're, mashallah, they just exude confidence when they're speaking to people without even trying. You'll see the brothers sometimes fumbling for words to try to be right because it's just in our nature. And you'll see the sisters being smooth and just dropping bits and pieces of gems here and there. Mashallah, the brothers doing an awesome, amazing job. So many are in the field. So many sisters are in the field. But I do have to tell you, brothers and sisters, this is not it's not a competition. It's not a race, although it kind of is, but it's not a competition of brothers versus sisters. It's a competition of who can do good and who can do the best. But alhamdulillah, a lot of the whyislam teams, you'll see there's a good mix. The only thing I will tell you is I wish there was more diversity amongst the people that are giving dawah. You'll see kind of like the African-American clique. You'll see the white convert clique. You'll see the Desi clique. You'll see the Arab clique. I wish that was different, but honestly, it doesn't matter. As long as people are out there teaching about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it doesn't matter, whatever. I'm not going to nitpick about who's giving dawah and who's not giving dawah. All right, I'll mention it one more time. There's a chat button right at the bottom. If you have any questions, by all means, jump on, ask away as it relates to this. Otherwise, I'm pretty much done, guys. This is it. That was super exciting. The series is going to be amazing. There's a lot of people that are involved in this series that are going to be pretty excited to jump on. A few more questions. Dawah and COVID-19. How can we use the time effectively? Jazakallah khairan, Sister Romana. Sister Romana is one of my teachers when it comes to dawah, and Jazakallah khairan for being on and asking that question. Dawah and COVID-19, how can we use this time effectively? Look, first and foremost, you've made like a conscious decision on a Sunday at 5:30 to be here instead of with your family. You're fasting, you're exhausted, you're thirsty, you're hungry, and I cannot thank you enough from the bottom of my heart for being present. This is step one. And for some of you, you might be an expert. For some of you, you might be a beginner. For some of you, you're still confused about everything I was just talking about throughout this presentation. This is step one. Be present at the sessions where you need to be. Otherwise, get online, get on social, and start giving dawah. I'll give you a few tidbits my wife and I are doing over here at the house. Outside of the Ramadan and Eid Ramadan decorations that we've put up, we're basically creating this little we found out that everybody in our entire community is out for walks every single day. I'm seeing a ton more people out and about. The weather is gorgeous. And so people are passing by the house regularly. And so, look, I would encourage you, if you're able to, people are bored. They are bored out of their mind. They will stop and read something outside of your house. They'll stop and read something outside of your house, or they'll stop to consider and look at something. I think you should put something outside of your house, put up a poster, write something on a whiteboard, Islamic fact of the day, put something interesting, something new. I bet you it'll encourage people to walk by and to be interested in what you have to say. Those are minor things for your community. I'm a big fan of starting with your community. Look, if you're on the Ring app, or if you're on that neighborhood watch, if you have a WhatsApp group that's local with your neighbors, I'm a big fan of posting stuff on there too. Hey guys, today's the first day of Ramadan. Our family's fasting. If you want to stop by and say hi from the window, we'd love to. Encourage our kids. They're fasting next year with us, but we're really excited. Tidbits like that just open up a window for you to start a conversation with your neighbor. Again, I'm a big fan of your neighbor first. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, countless hadith about your neighbor, about ikram al-dayf, about your duty to your guest. And so I'm a big fan of stretching your arms across the street and getting your neighbors to understand Islam. Otherwise, there are a plethora of opportunities on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, whatever opportunity you're comfortable in, jump on and start to share. Brothers and sisters, it doesn't have to be profound. It could be a hadith that you learned. Jump on there and share. Wallahi, sometimes I'll see people in my feed that'll just put the word subhanallah and it'll make me say subhanallah. And I'm like, all right, cool, subhanallah. Right. I'm sure there are many more examples of how you can use your time effectively. If you're just joining the realm of da'wah, jump on YouTube, type in Ahmed Didat, get some of those videos. It'll encourage some of your da'wah juices to get pumped up. Look up Dr. Zakir Naik. look up Hamza Georges, look up Mustafa Umar, look up, there are a ton of da'is, mashallah, all throughout the internet. I'm just forgetting some of them that have done some amazing work. Learn from their technique so that you're ready to jump in full force when all this is done.
Brother Amir, can you mention the donation link?
Yes, I'll mention that. All the way at the bottom of the presentation, you'll see launchgood.com. I'm sorry, I missed the dot. /whyislamsc. If you feel so inclined to help out Whyislam in our efforts, inshallah, we would love you. And during the month of Ramadan, obviously everything is multiplied. From Brother Ahmed, isn't dawah fard kifaya, meaning that if a group of people are doing it, then not every Muslim needs to do it? Honestly, man, I'm not comfortable giving you my opinion on this. I'd rather you consult one of the scholars later on. I think session 2 or 3 is part of this series. Inshallah, they'll discuss fard ayn versus fard kifaya, and they can tackle that subject.
Yeah.
I'd rather not pontificate or give you my personal opinion.
It's going to be Sheikh Shahid part 3.
All right, great. Shahid part 3. There you go. You can ask Sheikh Shahid. That's a great question. A lot of scholars have had debate about this, and you'll be surprised to know the answer, inshallah, as well. I'm sorry, Sister Romana, a different Sister Romana. Either way, one of the Sister Romanas is my teacher, and thank you. All right, I'll wait just a few more minutes for any other questions. Otherwise, I want to mention the link one more time, launchgood.com/whyislamsc. Jazakallah khairan, Brother Saad, for putting this whole series together. This is an awesome effort as part of the Whyislam journey. And Jazakallah khairan, pass the road test. Nice. Inshallah, we'll see you guys with us for the next few stops in the lecture series. I'll do this really quickly for the group. On everyone, this is my personal email address. You're more than welcome to send me whatever email you'd like. If you have a question, if you need a resource, if you need help, I can always connect you with brothers and sisters that are in your area or that can give you a right answer, inshallah. Other than that, Saad, anything else?
Good luck. See you guys next Sunday at 5:30 p.m. inshallah on a series by Brother Shahab, the method of Gorab.
Awesome. Gorab is awesome. If you haven't heard of it, it's a very clear, succinct way of what you need to cover when you're giving dawah. It's really important. Sometimes we like to yap. I'll tell you a quick, a quick little story. I was with this brother, and the brother was giving dawah to someone, and he was asking him about the revelation. The guy that he was giving dawah to was asking him about the revelation. And so the brother says, oh, the revelation. Let me tell you, the revelation started with this angel named Jibreel, whose wings were from east to west. He was a giant angel, and he came down to the prophet, and he held the prophet tightly, and he squeezed his thighs, and he said, Iqra. Brothers and sisters, no need for the drama, no need for the additional Harry Potter sound effects and all of that. You don't need that in your dawah. All right, relax, okay? It's way easier than you think. Gorab is a very easy, methodical way to talk about what to address during your dawah. You'll have a lot of fun stories to share. Jazakumullahu khairan. We'll see you next Sunday for the second part of the series. And I love you all. Happy Ramadan.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Jazakallahu khairan.
Here is our Facebook Live. Alhamdulillah. At the same time, it's going to be edited. I'm going to edit the one top part. It'll be on YouTube 3-4 days.
All right, guys. Have a happy iftar. Alaikum.
Amir, can you put me? Could you put me as a host? So I can stop the Facebook Live.
Done.
Amir, can you put me as a host?
I did.
Okay. Let me see this. Okay, more top live.